we're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's January 3rd here in Seoul. I'm Shin, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Park Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed that covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending over social media over the past 24 hours. You may be wondering how this year will play out, while some ancient astrologers made predictions, including Michel de Nostradam, also known as Nostradamus. This French astrologer, best known for predicting the rise of Hitler and the French Revolution, envisioned that in 2024, the Earth will see colossal tsunamis and a new pope. Another prediction had to do with Charles III abdicating as King of Britain, with Prince Harry replacing him on the throne. Lastly, Nostradamus predicted that China would start a war, particularly on the naval front. And South Korea's main opposition party leader, Lee Jae-myung, is recovering in the hospital after being stabbed in the neck. A 67-year-old man, who first appeared to be Lee's fan, attacked him with an 18-centimeter knife he had bought online. The assailant approached Lee asking for an autograph, then suddenly lunged forward and attacked him. Lee has undergone surgery and is now in an intensive care unit recovering and is conscious. The attack took place during a question and answer session with reporters after Lee visited a construction site for a new airport on Kadok Island just offshore from Busan. Now, evacuate immediately. Don't watch TV. Remember the Great East Japan earthquake of 2011? Escape now. This is exactly what Japan's NHK announcer Ichimi Yamauchi said while making an evacuation order on live television as a 7.6 scale earthquake hit the Noto Peninsula in the central prefecture of Ishikawa on Monday afternoon. While Yamauchi tried to stick to disaster broadcast guidelines and remain calm, her voice trembled and her desperation was directly conveyed to the viewers. Yamauchi's broadcast has since buzzed on Japanese social media. Instead of people criticizing her for not being professional and exposing her emotions on air, many praised her and related to her human side, especially since Japan understands how traumatic earthquakes can be. Back in 2011, nearly 20,000 died, most from the following tsunamis. The large-scale quake at the time also caused a nuclear meltdown in Fukushima, and Monday's quake also took the lives of at least 55. Tsunami warnings were issued for 9 prefectures, and almost 100,000 people were evacuated. And some experts believe the quake shifted land in the Noto region near the epicenter up to 1.3 meters to the west. Now, here in the studio, what were your thoughts on this story? And I think this story personally resonated with me, being a news journalist myself.
Yep.
It's really important that you keep your emotions quite content on air, but to see Yamauchi actually show her emotions in such an urgent situation shook me up a little. What about you?
Yeah, so it's obviously terrible what's happening in Japan at the moment, and we've seen what it has done in the past. I don't blame the reporter for being a little emotional, especially if it's happening in her country as well. I'm sure she's very terrified. She may have family within the area as well, and that's the reason why she probably was able to give out her emotion and be human like we are. Even though that sometimes we have our reporter voice on, we are still human beings at the end of the day. And I think I'm glad that they actually praised her rather than criticized her, because this is a very serious situation. The magnitude of that earthquake was massive, so that shouldn't be underestimated. So yes, I think praise to the reporter.
Exactly, given the situation that the Japanese people have already been through so much, including the earthquakes and tsunamis, the aftermath, they know how big these tremors can cause so much and wreak havoc. What were your thoughts on this story, Hyun?
Well, I'm just glad that this earthquake did not cause a tsunami like the one from the 2011 and any nuclear meltdowns. I actually spoke to a friend who lives in Japan, and he actually said, it's just something that you just have to live with if you live in Japan. But, the country is always prepared for high magnitude earthquakes with its infrastructure and prompt evacuation plans. And if I were the broadcaster, I probably would have done the same to show the seriousness of the situation. I mean, it's their duty to relay the facts to the audience. But I'm sure, that's exactly how the broadcaster felt, giving the evacuation order at that moment.
Exactly, telling everyone to turn off their TVs and just run for their lives.
Right.
That's how dire the situation was. Now, switching gears to our main discussion topic of the day, we're now at day 3 of the new year. Are you keeping your New Year's resolution so far? There seems to be one that's extremely hard to keep even for a few hours, and that's quitting smoking. But recently, we're seeing more Gen Z ditching their smoking habits. Specifically, they're giving up on vaping. Why? My AI voice secretary will tell you.
Gen Z are finally throwing their vapes out the window, not necessarily because of health concerns, but rather to show solidarity with the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo is the world's main supplier of cobalt, a key material for many lithium batteries. 90% of cobalt is mined in Congo, where people, even children, tirelessly work under hazardous conditions and are at risk of skin or lung diseases. Since vaping uses lithium batteries, the correlation between vaping and cobalt mining in Congo has been formed, and many young adults have taken to social media to show that they are willing to quit. The trend of quitting vaping and smoking is snowballing, especially since we've headed into the new year.
As we saw in the introductory video, some young adults are quitting vaping in support of people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But there are others who are quitting smoking as part of their New Year's resolution. And here in the studio, let me first ask you this. Are you a smoker at the moment?
Actually, I used to be, but it's been around 7 years since I actually quit cold turkey. Yeah, so pat on the back for me. Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it's always been, one of my New Year's resolutions, along with shedding some extra pounds. I started smoking at a relatively early age in high school for two reasons. One, to be cool, and two, out of just pure curiosity. And, at a young age, you don't really realize like the health risks, mainly because you don't really feel it at a young age. But as you get older, like me right now, you slowly feel, the pain kicking in from, shortness of breath, constant coughing and chest tightening, not to mention the putrid smell you carry around and, affect other people. And if there's one thing I did in my life so far, one thing I did really well, it would have to be quitting smoking, because there's nothing good you get out of, smoking.
I think you mentioned a really good point, Ki-hoon. The fact that you might have started off with pure curiosity or peer pressure from trying to look cool, but at the end of the day, kudos to you for quitting smoking for 7 years and going on forward. What about you, Walter? Are you a smoker?
I was somewhat of a rebel back in my younger days. When I say younger, I mean obviously way too young. I started smoking at the age of 12. Which is very young. I believe that's in primary school still. And all the way up until 16. That's because I was supposedly cool, like Ki-hoon said. But mainly down to peer pressure was the reason why I started smoking. It wasn't a great... to be honest with you, I actually didn't enjoy it. I just did it because I was in a group that was full of smokers, and that's just what we did. And if you wanted to be cool, you wanted to be in the group, that's what you had to do, and that's what I did. So it was actually quite easy for me to give up because I never enjoyed it anyway. I did actually try again in my early 20s to start smoking again, but as Ki-hoon mentioned, the putrid smell that comes from smoking is what I dislike the most, and I'm very sensitive to how I smell. I don't want to smell bad. So I also tried vaping because that is supposed to be better in regards to the way it makes you smell. But then I also gave that up as well. As Ki-hoon mentioned, our health is really important, and that's the reason why I quit all of those.
Well, personally for me, I've never smoked before. I've never touched a cigarette in my life or a vape. But the thing is, I do realize that this is a problem, especially among the teenage population. As you both mentioned, you guys started off as teens. There seems to be so many temptations and the feeling of peer pressure where you don't want to have that fear of missing out. But while starting it could be easy, quitting is really, really difficult, and I think our generation seems to be well aware about that. That's why we have quite a different perspective on smoking compared to older generations, right?
Right, so the views of the younger generation towards smoking have changed a bit over the years. I remember when I first came to Korea back in 2010, smoking was allowed in pretty much most facilities like nightclubs, singing rooms and internet cafes, and of course in the streets, which nowadays you don't see very often. And most places are no smoking zones, so our surroundings have definitely influenced our smoking behaviors. And another factor in the reduced number of smokers among younger generations is also the implementation of no smoking in apartment buildings. And so as we grew up seeing our parents at least try to quit or hide the fact that they're actually smoking, they would actually go outside the building and hide in a small alley and smoke. I think that's something that it wasn't kind of viewed as socially acceptable and something that only a minority of people actually did. So, and of course, the effects of secondhand smoking, we grew up seeing those things. So, people thought, maybe we shouldn't smoke, it's a bad thing to do. So I think all in all, we're more educated to not start smoking in the first place. And also we learned the negative impact it has on our health and even our surroundings. As we saw a fire break out, a few weeks ago, like in Christmas, where it took away the lives of 2 people, and the police are suspecting that it actually came from like a cigarette butt.
I know, cigarette butt. We're seeing it on the news how a cigarette butt can actually cost people's lives, and not to mention the disadvantages that it takes to your health really does affect the way we perceive smoking. Would you like to add on to how our generation seems to be looking at this habit?
Yeah, obviously when people they don't put out cigarette butts correctly, it can cause fires within the houses. In Australia, I know it's very common to see bushfires started because of just one simple cigarette. But what I've just seen just from personally, I still see a lot of it on the streets, to be honest with you. And it's not a good look, but it's just their lifestyle and I can't change them from doing that. But yes, as Kim mentioned, we've become more educated about smoking. Therefore, it has enticed people to stop smoking. A long time ago, they used to say that it was good for you, right? But now the times have changed. The problem here, though, in South Korea is just how cheap cigarettes are and how easily accessible they are. Now, I mean, I know that the public are still complaining that the cigarette prices are hiking up, but if you compare them to somewhere like, example, Australia, where they're paying like $30 to $40 for one packet of cigarettes, then they'll understand that $5 or $6 really isn't that much.
Right.
And also we've seen our generation stop the advertisement of cigarettes.
Yeah.
They're still available in some places like the convenience stores, but there's nothing on TV or in big billboards. So that's how we're seeing this these days.
I think another trend that I would like to point out is vaping.
Yes.
Instead of actually using the nicotine-filled like cigs, I think people are now going vaping, and they think that not only does it look cool, maybe that could be like one of the reasons there, but also health benefits too. They think that compared to actual cigarettes, vaping would be better. But we all know nicotine itself is not healthy for you at all, and that's why it's a big resolution trying to go nicotine-free from the year 2024. And we asked our viewers if they've tried quitting or had anyone successfully quit smoking as a whole. If so, we asked them to share a few pointers and tips. Here's what 3 of them had to say. Take a look at the screen to find out. Let's start with Tiris Bell. Tiris Bell said, "My dad told me a story. He used to smoke back in the early 90s, but when he started dating my mom, he said she would marry him on the condition that he stopped smoking and he quit cold turkey." Oh, that's sweet. Nambia said, "My whole family quit smoking cigarettes, me included, and nicotine gum worked the best for me at least." Leontio said, "For me, the best motivation to quit smoking is for the sake of your loved ones because you want to be healthy for them." Now, these are all great resolutions. I really hope that you guys can pull through them in the year of 2024. And it's not really just based on your motivation and the dedication that you just want to quit smoking. There should be some policies and support programs that can better facilitate you trying to bring this as a habit. So here in Korea, what are some policies out there that are helping or encouraging people who used to smoke from quitting?
There have been continuing efforts made by the government to reduce the smoking rate in Korea. According to the KDCA, the smoking rate in Korea has been on a downward trend. 27.3% in 2009, 20.6% in 2020, so which is obviously a positive sign. Stronger policies have been implemented over the years as well, raising the price of cigarettes, regulating images of packages by requiring health warnings and advertisements, and increasing more, non-smoking areas in different facilities and buildings. There is also a hotline and an online support program in Korea called No Smoke Guide that gives you a thorough step-by-step guide to help you quit smoking for good.
And hopefully these policies are effective. Are there any more programs out there?
Well, like Kim mentioned earlier, most of the indoor venues now are non-smoking. There is about 90% of all venues within Korea actually that are non-smoking indoors, like restaurants, cafes, etc. Now, there still are some of those. I have seen a few of them still indoors, but not as much. But you'll see designated smoking areas in the outside for sure. So as long as it's kept outside, that's good, because obviously when you go to cafes, you have children around, you don't want secondhand smoking. I'm not sure if this will actually stop people from smoking more than just move them to a different area. It may be more inconvenient, therefore maybe they'll stop smoking because of that. But we have Largely mentioned the majority of the public view smoking in a bad way because of the smell, and I think some people are maybe embarrassed as well.
Yeah.
I think maybe the peer pressure of saying that they smell bad might help them stop smoking.
Maybe.
So maybe we can use peer pressure in a good way.
Yeah, use peer pressure in a good way. Now, we're going to hear how it's like in other parts of the world, what type of support programs there are, and hopefully towards the end of the discussion, you guys can share your experience back in Australia. But before then, we're going to include another millennial who's actually been quitting smoking for years now. And let's better find out what the policies are like in London, where he's living at the moment. Stay tuned for our live interview. To better find out how hard yet possible it is to stop smoking, we're going to include a fellow millennial living in London. It's Jackson Ma, who's quit for 5 years now. Welcome, Jackson.
Hi everyone, I'm Jackson.
Nice to have you here on News Generation, Jackson.
Yeah.
All right, Jackson, we're going to go around and ask you a question each. It's been 5 years since you stopped smoking. Congratulations. What made you decide to quit smoking in the first place?
So before I get into the reasons for quitting it, I'd like to talk about the reasons I started smoking it. So I started smoking when I was in high school, and at that time, I just thought it was so cool. You know, most teenagers go through a rebellious stage during puberty time. We smoke, drink, and fight with each other. By the time I later started to realize that smoking cannot make me look cool and it was bad for my health, I've already become an adult and become sensible, but I had become a bit addicted to nicotine. But what really made me decide to quit it was my family's.
Right.
I am well aware that nicotine is bad for the health and that smoking can lead to many diseases. But my father, uncle, and my grandfather, they all smoke. So they've been smoking for a very long time, like since they were teenagers. So they always cough a lot when they are smoking. Then I was like, hey, are you okay? You shouldn't be smoking anymore. Look at you, always coughing and got yellow teeth. You know, smoking is bad for your health, blah, blah, blah. And they will be like, then why do you smoke? We do know that smoking is not healthy, but we've been smoking for a long time. It is too difficult to quit it for people like us, but you can.
I see.
At that time, I don't know what to say when they respond me like that, but I actually very care about my family's health. And I know there is no any effect in just talking about it. I think that maybe my actions would have even a small effect on them. So I decided to quit smoking. I think that maybe they will be impacted by me and smoke less if I
That's
quit it
great to hear.
successfully.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
now
that must have been a
I need
very
to-
yep. Sorry. That must have been a very important and hard decision you made. Jackson, were there any centers or support programs that helped you actually quit smoking?
Actually, I didn't seek any help from any support programs
Oh.
or centers. Yeah, maybe it is because I haven't smoked for a very long time. It had been only 3 years. So it is not that hard for me to quit smoking, but that's only in comparison to someone who's been like smoking for 10 or 20 years.
That's excellent. So, like, I want you to just give me your best tip, one good tip on how to quit smoking.
So
I mean, it's
so
a difficult
any tip
question.
for
Yeah.
other young smokers, right? So I think to be honest, no matter how long you've been smoking, as long as your body and mind have developed a dependence on nicotine, you're gonna go through a bit of a bad time when you are just starting to quit smoking. So I think I did have a very hard time when I was just starting to quit it. The withdrawal reaction at that time made it difficult for me to like concentrate on studying. So
Exactly,
I was
Jackson.
like,
But do you feel much better now that you've quit smoking as a whole?
yeah, I feel better
Awesome.
now.
I think that's the most
Yeah.
important takeaway from your interview. Though it was a difficult process, it definitely made you feel better, not only mentally, but physically. Thank you so much, Jackson. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Okay.
All right, and ending off, why don't we inform our viewers on any support policies in Australia and tips on how to better quit smoking, starting with you, Kyun.
For me, I think it's not about how long you live anymore. It's about how healthy you live. And I think in Korea, we're on the right track. And in Australia, apparently they've actually banned any kind of import of vapes starting this year. So definitely policies like that really will help the society, to become non-smokers in all.
I think that's very important. Are there any tips that you have on better quitting smoking?
Well, I guess we've tried them all, haven't we? So, smoking's for losers. That's all I've got to say. But no, really, it's come down to it's not great for your health, and you got to keep your health in check these days.
Exactly, and I do think that there are many support programs out there here in South Korea, but some to actually look out for, like in Australia, is raising the prices there and actually better campaigning the societal awareness on the health drawbacks that smoking can cause, and really being an open society to listening to all those smokers out there and providing them counseling could be another breakthrough. And hopefully we'll see that, but in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Ki-hoon
Always a pleasure.
and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.